The world is not just strange, it is also very quiet, and that quietness, sometimes, is the scariest thing of all. I worked as a private investigator for 12 years. 12 years of looking into dark corners that ordinary people dare not look. I used to think I had seen enough, that nothing could make me shiver anymore. I was wrong. Below are 5 true stories, not from books, not from movies, but from actual tape recordings, photographs, and my own sleepless nights. Sit still. Do not turn on the light. And absolutely, and do not turn around unless you have a reason. Because there are things that only exist at the edge of your vision, and they are just waiting for you to look at them in order to become real. I received the call at 11:20 p.m. A young woman named Mia, 22 years old. Her voice was not crying, but it trembled like a guitar string, stretched too tight, about to snap. "I'm so scared," she said. "My ex-boyfriend, Leo, took $5,000 from me. Then he disappeared." I asked what Leo did for a living. Mia said he used to be a real estate agent, very polite, very wealthy. He drove a Corvette, wore expensive suits, and was always the first to pull out his wallet to buy drinks for friends. He promised to rent Mia an apartment downtown for half the market price. The apartment had a river view, floor-to-ceiling windows, solid oak kitchen cabinets. Mia gave him the deposit. Leo gave her the key. She went to see the place once. Leo opened the door, gave her a tour, pointed at every corner, smiled, and talked very naturally. Then he said, "Move in next week, okay? I'll keep this place just for you." The following week, Leo stopped answering his phone. His number was disconnected. The apartment was locked tight. No one answered when she knocked. And $5,000 vanished without a trace. I started digging. I searched real estate records, aliases, old contracts, even real estate forums. Leo used to work for a small agency in the suburbs, was fired after 6 months, the reason not specified. But the strange thing was, he still had keys to over 20 vacant apartments. 23 keys, each labeled with a faded tape address, scribbled handwriting. I followed the addresses. Most were storage units, old offices, unsold condos. But one address made me stop. The 12th floor of an abandoned building in the old industrial zone. The building used to be a shopping mall, closed since 2015. Only the lower floors still rented out as storage. The 12th floor had been sealed off, but Leo still had a key. I drove there at dusk. The building looked like a concrete skeleton, broken windows everywhere, wind whistling through empty hallways, sounding like a long sigh. I entered the elevator. It still ran, but squealed floor by floor like someone crying softly. The doors opened on the 12th floor, a long hallway, flickering fluorescent lights. End quote. Quote. I walked, my footsteps echoing on cracked tile. The last apartment on the hall, a blue door with peeling paint. I inserted the key. The lock clicked a dry sound. I opened the door. The first smell that hit me was not dust nor mildew. It was the smell of bodies that had been in an enclosed space for too long. The smell of stale sweat, of feces and urine mixed together. The smell of despair. I stepped inside, my right hand holding a flashlight, my left hand on my holster, though I hated using it. A narrow hallway, pitch black, leading to 5 small doors. No windows here, almost no sound from outside. I opened the first door. The flashlight beam swept across a man. He sat on the floor, back against the wall, an iron chain around his neck. The chain was about 2 meters long, allowing him to move from a bed, an old mattress on the floor, to a bucket, probably a toilet. His eyes were wide open, unblinking, his pupils contracting from the light. His lips were cracked and dry, dried blood at the corners of his mouth. I asked, "Who are you?" He did not answer immediately. His mouth twitched like a fish out of water. Then he whispered, "Leo." Leo said, "Come see the apartment." Then locked the door. I wouldn't let me out. His voice was like wind through a narrow crack. He had been there for nearly 2 years, never seeing sunlight, only knowing time by the meals Leo brought at midnight. I asked him if he knew how many others there were. He shook his head, then looked toward the remaining doors. I opened the second door. Another man, thinner, weaker, lying motionless. I thought he was dead until his chest rose and fell, slowly, steadily. The third door. A young man, about 25, curled in a corner. When he saw the flashlight, he burst into tears, silent tears, just streaming down his dirty face, his hands covering his eyes like a child afraid of the dark. The fourth and fifth doors were the same, all men, ages 20 to 40, all chained, all there for at least 6 months. Leo was not a real estate agent. Leo was a kidnapper. He lured victims with cheap apartment offers, brought them to the fake apartment, then locked the door, chained them up, and called their families for ransom. Amounts from $5,000 to $20,000, depending on the family's ability to pay. But not everyone had family. Some were abandoned there for years. Leo brought food and water once a day, at midnight, so no one would see. They lived in darkness, no showers, no change of clothes, just waiting. I pulled out my phone, dialed 3 numbers. I hadn't even pressed send when I heard a key slide into the front door lock, a soft metallic sound. Then the lock turned. My heart beat faster, but I stayed calm. Footsteps, very light, very slow, step by step, as if the person knew exactly who they would meet. Leo. Leo had come back. He stood at the front door, about 10 meters away from me. He wore a black suit, white shirt, shiny leather shoes. But his eyes had no emotion, like the eyes of a dead fish. He looked at me, the corner of his mouth twitching upward, a smile not at all ferocious, the smile of someone who had planned everything for a long time, and now everything was going exactly as he wished. He said nothing. He pulled a lighter from his inner pocket, a silver lighter, engraved with the initials L. He flicked it, a tiny flame, and he touched the flame to the curtain. Synthetic fabric, it caught fire very quickly, flames leaping as if someone had poured gasoline on it. He stepped outside, locked the door, and slid the deadbolt. I heard the heavy bolt lock into place, a sound that could not be opened from the inside. I ran to the door, pushed, kicked, but it would not budge. Smoke started rolling from behind me, flames jumping from the curtain to the carpet, from the carpet to the wall. I ran into the hallway, opened all the doors, shouted, "Get out! Hurry!" I pulled the 2 victims who could still stand. The 3 of us ran down the hallway, looking for an exit. A window at the end of the hall, looking out into empty space. The 12th floor. Below was a vacant lot, but also some wrecked cars. Could be fatal if we jumped straight down. I smashed the glass with a metal chair. Cold air rushed in, carrying the smell of smoke from inside. I took off my backpack, pulled out my rope ladder, a 30-meter rope. I always carried one, after nearly dying once with no escape route. Leo had calculated most things, but he didn't know that. I tied the rope to the window frame, and dropped the other end down. The rope was long enough. "You go first," I told the thinnest man. He trembled as he grabbed the rope. I helped him over the sill. He slid down slowly but safely. The second man, the 25-year-old, also made it down. I was the last. The fire had reached the end of the hallway, the heat burning my face. I grabbed the rope and jumped out. The heat behind me pushed me down like a giant hand. I slid fast, my palms burning from friction, but I held tight. When I hit the ground, I tumbled onto dry grass. Above, the window exploded into blue, yellow, red flames. Leo died in the fire. At least, the firefighters said so. They found a charred body in the apartment, along with 2 victims who didn't make it out. I had saved 2, but 3 others died of smoke inhalation before firefighters arrived. I will never forget the screams from behind the doors I could not open. When police searched the scene, they found a small notebook in the burned vest pocket of Leo's suit, a brown leather notebook, cover warped from heat. Inside were 23 names, each with an address, ransom amount, and status, paid or abandoned. And the last line, written in black ink, very neat handwriting, 1. David the PI, I will come back for you. I thought it was just an empty threat from a dead man. But 2 years later, one autumn morning, as I walked out to my car, I saw a postcard tucked under my windshield wiper. No stamp, no return address. The postcard showed a hotel in another state with the pre-printed line, "Have a nice day." On the back, handwritten, "Leo is still doing well. And you?" The handwriting matched the notebook exactly. He was dead. I had seen the coroner's report. So, who wrote that card? I still keep it in my desk drawer, afraid to throw it away, also afraid to look at it too often. But occasionally, in the middle of the night, I hear a key slide into my front door lock. A very soft click, very familiar. I jump up, run to the door, fling it open. No one is there, just a faint smell of smoke, so faint I might be imagining it. Tom and Lisa were a young couple, both in their early 30s, with 2 children, a boy of 7 and a girl of 4. They moved into an old house in the suburbs, surrounded by endless fields. The house was huge, 7 bedrooms, but the price was the same as a 2-bedroom apartment in the city. "Too cheap," Tom laughed and told his wife. "Probably haunted." Lisa laughed too, but she never thought she would soon face something worse than a ghost. The first week was peaceful. They arranged furniture, children ran in the garden, everything seemed ideal. The second week, their 7-year-old son Max asked his mother at dinner, "Mom, why is the baby in the wall crying all the time?" Lisa thought he was joking, told him to eat quickly and go to bed. But that night, when the house fell into darkness, she heard it too. A child's cry, very distant but very clear, coming from the wall behind the master bedroom bed. The crying was not sobbing, but a steady sound, as if someone was crying unconsciously in their sleep. Lisa shook Tom awake. Tom listened, and he heard it too. They turned on the lights, checked the wall, knocked on each brick. Nothing. They called a construction worker, an old, experienced man. He knocked all over the wall with a hammer and shook his head. Normal wall, no cavities, no holes. Maybe the pipes are making noise. But the crying did not stop. 1 and 1. Every night, at exactly 2:17 a.m., it started. At first, for a few minutes, later, for hours. Max, the boy, became obsessed. He refused to sleep alone, every night running to his parents' room, his face pale. "The baby in the wall told me to come play," Max told his mother. Lisa could not take it anymore. They hired me. My name is Elena, and I specialize in cases like this, cases that police dismiss as hallucinations or ghosts. I don't believe in ghosts, but I believe in people. I researched the house's history. It was built in the 1980s, owned by a plastic surgeon named Dr. Moreau. He lived there alone after his wife died, no children. He disappeared 15 years ago. No one searched because he had no relatives. The property was sold by the bank, and the house changed hands many times. But there were no missing child reports in the area. I started by listening. I went to Tom and Lisa's house at 2 a.m., sat quietly in the master bedroom. At exactly 2:17, the crying began. I did not deny it was real, but I suspected a natural source. I borrowed a thermal imager, a device used to detect empty spaces in walls. I scanned the wall behind the bed. At one point, the temperature was abnormal, 5 degrees colder than the rest. Not natural cold, but the kind of cold that comes from airflow, a hollow space. I drilled a small hole, the width of a chopstick, and inserted a borescope. On the screen, at first, just darkness. Then, an image slowly appeared. A room, about 4 square meters. Inside the room, an iron bed, a floral blanket rotted with age, and, on the bed, a skeleton. The skeleton was wearing a pink nightgown, hands placed on its chest, legs straight. Next to the bed, a music box, a leather journal, and a rag doll. I called a construction worker to break down the wall. First layer of bricks removed, then second, then third. When the hole was big enough, the smell came out. The smell of dry decay, but also lavender, probably from sachets. I climbed into the secret room. On the walls were dozens of photographs of women, each with a caption, name, date of arrival, date of completion. They were Dr. Moreau's patients. He had kidnapped them, locked them in this room, and performed cosmetic surgeries without anesthesia to test his revolutionary techniques. Most died from shock, infection, or blood loss. Those who survived were kept there, never allowed to leave. The journal was over 300 pages, detailing each operation, each victim's reaction. In the last pages, his handwriting became shaky, erratic. I have created beauty. They do not understand. They are afraid, but I will continue. The child's crying that Tom and Lisa heard was not a child at all, but wildcats. Dr. Moreau kept 3 cats in another wall cavity to drown out the screaming of his victims. The cats bred, lived, and died in there. Over the years, some still survived, making sounds like crying. But what made me freeze was the last page of the journal. There, pasted an old black and white photograph of a little girl about 5 years old, brown hair, white dress, standing in front of a clinic. On the back of the photo, handwriting, Elena, patient number 7, escaped through the vent. I miss you very much. Elena is my name. I do not remember any of this. I do not remember ever being there, but when I looked closely at the photo, I recognized the dress. My mother once told me I had a white dress like that, and I lost it after one trip. And this room, this smell, this feeling of being surrounded by thick walls. A very distant memory surfaced, as if I had once cried here, screamed here, and crawled through a narrow vent to escape. I did not tell Tom and Lisa this story. I only told them that I had handled it, that they should move as far away as possible and never return. They moved a month later. As for me, I still keep Dr. Moreau's journal. I read it many times, trying to recover the lost memories, but each time I read, I only remember one more thing: the darkness, the thick darkness I could touch, and the cat cries, and a deep feeling of being lost. And I still wake up at 2:17 a.m. without an alarm clock, my heart racing, my ears straining to hear whether I just heard a cry from the wall of my own bedroom. My name is Rachel. I worked as a private investigator for 20 years. Then I retired, moved to a small coastal town, living a quiet life. I thought I had seen enough, that I had paid my debt to the profession. But the world did not allow me to rest. It all started with a local radio station, a late-night show that broadcast listener calls. A man's voice, deep and slow, calling himself the caller, began phoning in once a week at 3 a.m. The first time, listeners thought he was a drunk. He told a story about a blonde girl, name unknown, strangled in a parking garage of a shopping mall in a neighboring town. He gave details. She wore red sneakers, a gray sweater, shoulder-length hair. He described how she stopped breathing, her eyes wide open, and he looked into her eyes until they went dull. Listeners laughed, called it a joke. But a week later, police found the body of a girl matching the description in an abandoned parking garage. No traces, no clues. The second episode, he told about a man buried alive under the concrete foundation of an unfinished construction site. He described pouring concrete slowly, letting the victim feel the weight of material pressing on each part of the body. A few days later, that construction site discovered a body in a still damp concrete layer. Police kept silent, but I had my own sources. I started following the show. I recorded every episode. By the 10th episode, he said, there was a private investigator who almost caught me. 10 years ago, in another city, she was very good. Her name is Rachel. Thanks to her, I learned how to become more perfect. Thank you, Rachel. I am watching you. My heart stopped. I had told no one about that case. No one knew I had pursued a predator for 3 years until he vanished like a ghost. And now he had returned, not to meet me, but to play a game over the airwaves. I spent 3 days analyzing his voice. He had a tiny regional accent. When pronouncing S, he lisped slightly, as if there was a gap between his front teeth. He often used the words river and broken bridge and the place where the lights never turn off. I searched old maps. North of the city, there was a river, and on it, an iron bridge that collapsed during a storm in 1992. The bridge was never rebuilt, and nearby was an old power plant that stopped operating in 1995. But the tall floodlights on the plant roof still shone. Rumor said it was to keep children away, but no one knew who turned them on. I drove there at midnight. The road was winding, dark, barely 2 lanes. As I neared the broken bridge, I turned off my headlights and parked on the shoulder. The light from the power plant flickered in the distance, like a pair of yellow eyes in the darkness. I got out and walked along the riverbank. Wet grass, slippery. I found an iron door under the bridge, rusted, but the lock was new. I used a crowbar, not to break it, but because the lock was cheap, I had learned to pop it during a police job. The lock opened. The door screeched. Inside was a basement about 20 square meters. Not a coal or water cellar, but a room arranged with intention. On the walls, enlarged photographs, each a face. I recognized some from missing persons bulletins. Under each photograph, a suitcase. I opened the first suitcase, my hands shaking. Inside were remains wrapped in plastic and a personal item, a silver necklace engraved with a name. The second suitcase, a wristwatch. Its face cracked, the hands stopped, at 3:17. I opened them one by one, counting 12 suitcases, 12 victims, and the last suitcase. I opened it, and inside was not remains, but a photograph, a photo of me, taken from a distance, through a telephoto lens. Me standing on my front porch, holding a coffee cup, wearing a robe, the day before. He had just been there. I did not call the police immediately. I went on the radio the next night, asked to speak live. "I know you're listening," I said, my voice steady even though my heart was pounding. "I found where you hid them. You were wrong to think I wouldn't come back." Silence. The whole studio silent. Listeners silent. 15 seconds. 20 seconds. Then the phone rang. The technician looked at me. I nodded. He was on air. His voice was still deep, still slow, but with a new tone. Delight. "Rachel," he said, "you are very good, better than I thought, but you will never find me. Because I am very close to you. In fact, I have been standing behind you all evening." I spun around. The studio door was ajar, the hallway empty, fluorescent lights flickering. No one. I ran to the parking lot, where my car sat under a streetlight. On the back seat, a black baseball cap. I did not open the door. I looked through the glass. The cap lay there, peacefully, as if its owner had just stepped out. I had locked my car. I always locked it. He could not have opened the door. So, when did he put it there? I called the police. They took fingerprints and DNA from the cap. No match in any system. He had no name, no record, no history. He was just a voice on the radio. After that night, he never called again. The late-night show continued, but the caller was gone. I moved again, this time to a 23rd floor apartment with no external fire escape. But I still wake up at 3:17 a.m. almost every night. I do not set an alarm. My body just wakes, and I lie, still, listening. There is a very soft sound, like footsteps on carpet, right outside my bedroom door. Even though I know the door is double locked, even though I know no one can be there. Still, I dare not open the door. I just lie there, waiting for dawn. I retired after the third case, swearing I would never take another client. I bought a small house in an alley, grew vegetables, kept a cat, lived a boring and safe life. But one winter day, a young family came to me. A husband and wife and their 7-year-old son, standing outside my door in the pouring rain. The husband named Derek, the wife Nora, the son Sam. They told me that their elderly neighbor, an old woman named Greta, 78 years old, had been missing for 2 months. No one had reported it because Greta was eccentric, often gone for weeks visiting distant relatives. But this time, there were no postcards, no calls, and the door to her apartment, number 204, was always locked, even though a light in the living room flickered every night. They hired me, not because they were worried about her, but because they had started to smell something strange from the crack of the door. And their son asked every night, "Did Greta lock someone in her wall?" I accepted because I was bored, and because I told myself this was just a simple check, nothing serious. I arrived at the old building at dusk. It was a 5-story walk-up from the 1960s, peeling yellow paint, dark hallways. Room 204 was on the second floor, at the end of the hall. I inserted the key. Derek had borrowed it from the building manager. The door opened softly, without a sound. Inside, a small apartment, living room, 1 bedroom, a bathroom. Everything tidy, furniture covered with white cloths, not a speck of dust. Too tidy, so tidy that I felt the apartment was trying to hide something. I walked around, checked the kitchen cabinets, under the bed, the bathroom, nothing unusual. But when I returned to the living room, I noticed a new brick wall built between the living room and the bedroom. The wall was thicker than the others, and the mortar was still fresh, not completely dry. There was no reason to build a wall right in the middle of two rooms unless to hide a space behind it. I called a construction worker, an old acquaintance who had helped me many times, asking few questions. He arrived in 30 minutes, carrying a hammer and chisel. He chipped away the first brick. The brick was soft, as if laid hastily. The smell came out as soon as the first brick was removed. The smell of burnt candles, the smell of wilted flowers, and a very faint smell of dried blood, but blood that had dried a long, long time ago. The worker stopped, looked at me. I told him to continue. Second layer, third layer. When the hole was big enough to crawl through, the worker said, "You go in first. I'll wait outside." I crawled through the hole, dropping into a room about 12 square meters. In the room was a small altar. On the altar, a strange wooden statue, not Buddha nor Christ, but a doll-like figure wearing a dress, its face painted red. On the walls hung dozens of photographs of men, each with a caption, name, birth date, date of initiation. I took photos with my phone, counted 11 men, spanning over 20 years. These men were all former neighbors of Greta, men who had suddenly moved away. No one reported them missing because they were all single, without family. And Greta, I discovered she was not in the main apartment, but right here, in another wall cavity, hidden behind a cloth-covered wooden door. I knocked on that door, and it opened from inside by itself. Greta stepped out, wearing an old floral dress still intact, her hair pinned up, red lipstick. She looked at me, smiled, and said, "You found it, did you? I thought you were better than that." I stepped back, my hand on my phone, already dialing 911. Greta did not seem aggressive. She just walked to the altar, lit an incense stick, then sat on a chair. "They came here. They promised. They said they loved me. Then they left. I just kept them here. I gave them a place to stay, a meal, and they will stay forever." She spoke calmly, as if describing a recipe. I asked, "Where are they now?" Greta pointed to the photographs on the wall. "They are here. I only kept their bodies. Their souls have flown away." I did not want to think about what was under the altar. The suitcases I glimpsed in the dark corner. Police arrived 15 minutes later, arrested Greta, searched the room. They found the remains of 11 men, preserved with lime powder and scented sachets. And at the 12th position, empty, only a photograph newly placed on the altar. It was a picture of Derek, Nora's husband, the man who had hired me. I did not dare ask Greta how she obtained that photo, or where Derek had been during the 2 months she was missing. After that case, I returned the money to Derek's family and refused every call regarding eccentric neighbors. I returned to my small house, but I could not sleep peacefully. Every time I heard a slight sound from behind my wall, I would jump up, flashlight in hand, ready to smash through the fresh paint. My name is Sophia, a young private investigator, only 2 years in the business. I thought I was smart, quick, that nothing could get past me. I was wrong. This 5th story makes me wish I had chosen insurance sales. A woman named Helen came to my cramped office. She looked exhausted, dark circles under her eyes, messy hair, a wrinkled tracksuit. She placed a cloth doll on my desk, A handmade doll in a red dress, yellow hair, blue glass eyes. My daughter's doll. Blue, she said. It moves by itself, at night, and it whispers. I thought she had postpartum depression or sleep deprivation hallucinations. I asked, "What does it whisper?" Helen closed her eyes, bit her lip. "Come play with Mommy." I tried to hold back a smile, but a part of me warned, "Don't laugh." I accepted the case, intending to quickly confirm that nothing was wrong and send a bill. I went to Helen's house, a small suburban home with a garden, eerily quiet. Her daughter, Lily, 6 years old, blonde hair, blue eyes, looked exactly like the doll. Lily carried the doll all day, talked to it as if it were her best friend. I installed 3 wireless cameras, one in the living room, one in Lily's room, one in the hallway. The first night, nothing. The second night, nothing. The third night, I sat in my car parked outside, watching the tablet screen. At 3 a.m., the camera feed from Lily's room began to glitch, as if someone was interfering with the signal. Then, the image cleared. The doll was on a wooden shelf next to the bed. It did not roll. It stood up. I replayed the footage, zoomed in. The doll stood up on its 2 cloth legs, with no visible strings or magnets. It took small steps, one by one, stepped off the shelf, walked across the floor, circled around Lily's bed, then stopped by the window. Its head slowly turned toward the camera, and its lips moved. I turned up the volume. A deep voice, not a child's, came from the speaker. "Come play with Mommy." The whisper was so clear, I could feel breath in it. I went into the house immediately, turned on the lights, examined the doll. Inside its belly, I made a small cut in the fabric. There was a transceiver, a tiny battery, a speaker, a microphone, and a seed-sized camera. But no motor, no wheels, no remote control system for movement. How did it move by itself? I used a frequency detector to trace the signal. It came from a house about 200 meters away, a run-down bungalow with a rusted tin roof, newspaper-covered windows. I did not wait for the police. My biggest mistake. I took a flashlight and a baton, walked along a forest path to that house. The front door was ajar, unlocked. I pushed it open, stepped inside. Pitch black inside, only the blue glow from computer monitors reflecting on the walls. A man sat before a control panel with 20 monitors, each monitor showing a different room, a different child. He wore ragged clothes, so thin that his collarbones protruded, his hair long and matted. He did not turn around when I entered. He only said, "You're 10 minutes late, Sophia." He knew my name. I raised my baton, shouted, "Turn around!" He spun his chair. I had never seen a face so pale, as if blood had been drained from his skin for years. His eyes looked at me, but not at my eyes. He looked past my shoulder toward the door. "Is she okay?" he asked. "Is my daughter okay?" I understood. He was Lily's biological father. His name was Vincent. He had been declared missing after a ferry accident 5 years ago. He had faked his death to escape gambling debts and had been living in a basement under this house, a basement I had not yet discovered. He had embedded cameras inside dolls and sent them to houses with young children to observe, as he said. But with Lily, he did more. He talked to her through the doll, told her stories, taught her songs, until Lily believed the doll was her best friend. He whispered, "I did nothing wrong. I just wanted to be near my daughter. She doesn't have a mother anymore." Well, she has a stepmother, Helen, but Helen is not her real mother. I began to understand. Helen was Vincent's second wife, but not Lily's biological mother. Helen had adopted Lily after Vincent died. and Vincent, from the darkness, was desperately trying to maintain contact with his daughter. I called the police. Vincent was arrested, the equipment seized. Lily was sent for therapy. Helen cried, and I almost cried too. But the story did not end there. 3 months after Vincent was imprisoned, Helen called me at 3 a.m., her voice strange. "Sophia, the new doll I bought for Lily yesterday. It's talking again." I went to check. The new doll, bought from a supermarket, still had the price tag, no electronic devices whatsoever. But when I placed it on the table, it slowly turned its head toward me, and from its mouth, a voice came out. "You want to play with Mommy too?" That voice was not Vincent's, because Vincent was in a correctional facility 300 kilometers away. That voice was not human. I left the doll there, went home, and never accepted another case involving children's toys. I do not know how to explain dolls that move and talk without electricity. Some questions are not answered by technology, and some fears we must learn to live with. 5 stories, 5 private investigators, 5 ways of seeing the world differently. They are all true. Names have been changed, locations erased, but the scars in the mind remain. If you are listening to these lines in the darkness, alone, do one thing. Look behind your bedroom door. Not because someone is there, but because if something has always been there, it will never let you see it. It will only wait for you to turn away. Thank you for listening. Lock your doors. Check your closets. And never, never believe that you are alone in your own home, because private investigators know better than anyone. Loneliness is just an illusion. Somewhere, in a wall, in a basement, in a doll, someone is always watching. Someone is always waiting.